There are moments in life when it feels like you're standing still, when the prayers you've prayed seem to hang in the air with no response, when the doors you've knocked on remain closed and every clock in your heart seems to tick louder with each passing day. Waiting can feel like wasted time. Waiting can feel like punishment. Waiting can feel like God has forgotten your name. But what if the very place you want to escape from is the place where God is shaping you? What if the waiting is not wasted at all? See, we think progress only happens when we're moving, when something is changing, when we can measure growth. But God's definition of progress doesn't always look like ours. A seed buried in the soil doesn't look like it's moving. It looks like it's dead, but underground, unseen. It's breaking open, roots are stretching, life is forming. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. Your waiting is not wasted. Sometimes God will hide what he's building in you until the right time to reveal it. If he gave you the blessing too soon, it would crush you instead of carry you. If he opened the door before you were ready, you'd walk through it unprepared. Waiting isn't God holding back from you, it's God holding you together until you're strong enough to handle what he's about to release. And I know it hurts. I know the questions pile up in the silence. You wonder if you missed your chance, if everyone else is passing you by, if maybe you should just settle for less, because at least less is something. But waiting isn't about nothing happening. Waiting is about something deeper happening in you that can't be rushed. Patience isn't just the ability to sit still. Patience is faith stretched out over time. It's trusting that God is working behind the curtain while you're standing in the dark. Think about it. David was anointed as king but went back to tending sheep. Joseph had a dream but ended up in a pit, then a prison. Even Jesus waited 30 years before stepping into his public ministry. If waiting was wasted, then God would have skipped it for every person he ever used, but he didn't. Because the waiting season is a working season. What if the prayers you're praying right now are not being ignored, but being stored? What if every tear you've cried is watering the very ground where your victory is going to spring up? What if God is saying, I'm not denying you, I'm developing you? Sometimes the frustration you feel in the waiting is actually proof that God is stretching your capacity. You're learning to trust without evidence. You're learning to hope without signs. You're learning to lean not on what you see, but on the one you can't see. And that's not wasted. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains. Don't despise the waiting room, because the waiting room is where God does heart surgery. The waiting room is where he takes out the fear, the pride, the impatience, and replaces it with endurance, humility, and faith. The waiting room is where he aligns your heart with his timing so that when the door does open, you don't just walk into victory, you walk into maturity. I need you to hear this. Waiting doesn't mean God is late. Waiting doesn't mean God forgot. Waiting means God is precise. He knows the exact moment when the shift will come. And when it comes, it won't be small, it will be sudden, it will be major. It will make sense of everything you thought was wasted. So don't give up in the middle. Don't confuse silence with absence. Don't confuse delay with denial. If God can use a seed buried in the dark to bring forth a tree, he can use this season you're in to bring forth something greater than you imagine. Your waiting is not wasted, it's woven. Every disappointment, every delay, every prayer you thought went unanswered, God is weaving it into the story of your victory. And when the time comes, you'll look back and realize he wasn't just making you wait, he was making you ready. There are seasons where it feels like nothing is moving, nothing is changing, nothing is breaking loose. You keep showing up, you keep praying, you keep believing, and all you see is the same scenery day after day. It can make you wonder if this is just how life is going to be. But here's the thing about God, he doesn't need years to do what he can do in a moment. Shifts don't announce themselves weeks in advance. Shifts happen suddenly. All through Scripture, you see it. One moment the waters are standing in front of the Israelites, and in the very next breath, the Red Sea is split wide open. One moment Peter's a fisherman casting empty nets, and the next he's pulling in more fish than his boat can hold. One moment Paul is chained in a prison, and the next an earthquake shakes the ground and the doors fly open. It didn't take a committee, it didn't take a timeline, it didn't take a gradual process. It took one sudden move of God. That's why you can't give up in the waiting, Because just when it looks like nothing is happening, God is setting you up for a shift. You can go from overlooked to chosen in a single day. You can go from broken to healed in a single touch. You can go from waiting in the shadows to walking in victory in one act of God's timing. The problem is we get used to the pattern of delay, and then we convince ourselves that this is permanent. We start calling what's temporary a life sentence. We start building our expectations around the wilderness instead of the promise. But the same God who let his people walk around Jericho for 6 days is the same God who made the walls fall flat on the seventh. Don't mistake consistency for absence. Sometimes God lets it build, lets it linger, lets it stretch you, and then suddenly he shifts it. And when God shifts it, you don't have time to go back and get ready. You don't get a 2-week notice for breakthrough. That's why he's been preparing you in the quiet places, teaching you endurance, building your faith, because when the shift comes, it will be too fast to catch up. You'll have to step into it with the strength you've been building in the waiting. Think about Joseph. 13 years of betrayal, false accusations, prison walls. Nothing changed. Day after day, he was stuck in the same place, but one sudden shift took him from prisoner to prime minister in less than 24 hours. If Joseph had given up in the 13th year, he would have missed the shift of the 14th. That's why you can't let your current season define your future expectation. A dry field doesn't mean rain isn't coming. An empty net doesn't mean abundance isn't on the way. A closed door doesn't mean God doesn't have another door ready to open in a moment. Shifts happen suddenly. Maybe right now you feel like you've been circling the same wall for too long. You've been praying, sowing, standing, but nothing has cracked. Don't underestimate what God can do in one breath, one touch, one word. What has taken years to build against you can fall flat in a single moment of God's power. And here's the beauty: the same way a shift can happen suddenly in your circumstance, it can happen suddenly in you. One revelation from God can shift the way you see your life. One moment of surrender can shift the weight you've been carrying. One decision to trust again can shift the despair into hope. You don't always have to wait for the outside to change before the inside shifts. Sometimes God changes you first so you can carry what he's about to do around you. So don't despise the small signs. Don't overlook the quiet nudges. Sometimes the sudden shift looks like a subtle start. God may be stirring something that looks small, but it's the signal that something major is about to break. You don't have to figure out how. You don't have to know when. All you have to do is stay ready, stay faithful, stay expectant. Because when God moves, it will be faster than you imagined, greater than you planned, and stronger than you prayed for. Shifts happen suddenly. And when it happens, it won't just change your situation, it will change your story. What felt like wasted years will become the testimony that God was never late. He was setting the stage. And when the shift comes, you'll see why it had to take this long. And you'll thank him that it didn't take 1 second longer. It's frustrating when what you prayed for doesn't come when you thought it would. You step out in faith, you obey, you trust, and then you look at the calendar, you look at the clock, and nothing matches what you expected. Delay has a way of making us feel like God overlooked us, like the blessing went to somebody else, like maybe we got it wrong. But what if the very thing you're calling a delay is actually the disguise God wrapped your victory in? What if the blessing is hidden, not denied? Victory is often hidden in delay. Think about it. The disciples thought Jesus was late when Lazarus died. They begged him to come sooner, but he stayed where he was for 2 more days. By the time he showed up, Lazarus wasn't just sick, he was dead. But the delay wasn't because he didn't care. The delay was because he had something greater to reveal. If he showed up when Lazarus was sick, they would have known him as healer. But because he showed up after Lazarus was dead, they came to know him as resurrection and life. The delay was the setup for a bigger victory. Sometimes we think the delay is evidence that God isn't listening, but the delay is often proof that God is planning something deeper. He's not just working on the thing you prayed for, he's working on you while you wait for it. If he gave it to you too soon, you would only celebrate the gift. By letting it delay, he teaches you to celebrate the giver. Delay is not denial. Delay is development. Delay is God saying, I want to strengthen your faith, stretch your patience, and deepen your trust before I release what I have for you. Because if he gave it the moment you asked, you wouldn't have roots strong enough to sustain it. He lets you walk through the gaps so that when the victory comes, you'll have the character to carry it. There are battles you can't see that God is fighting for you while you're waiting. There are doors he's holding closed because he knows what's on the other side isn't ready yet, or you're not ready yet. There are connections he's orchestrating, chains he's breaking, paths he's clearing that don't show up on your timeline, but they're part of your testimony. And when it finally happens, you'll realize the delay wasn't wasted time, it was preparation time. Victory is often hidden in delay because God wants to reveal himself in a way you couldn't see otherwise. If everything happened the way you planned, your faith would stay small, but it's in the delay that faith grows. It's in the delay that prayer deepens. It's in the delay that you learn to praise when you don't feel like it, to trust when there's no evidence, to hold on when it would be easier to quit. And that kind of faith produces a victory that's not just about what you receive, it's about who you become. Maybe right now you're in that in-between space. You've prayed, you've waited, and it feels like nothing has shifted. Don't mistake the silence for absence. Don't mistake the waiting for wasting. The very thing you're calling a delay could be the soil where God is planting your miracle. Seeds don't sprout the moment you bury them. They break open in the dark first. They grow roots before they grow branches. What looks delayed on the surface might be right on time underground. And when it does break through, when the shift comes, it will make sense of everything you endured. You'll realize God wasn't late. He was layering your testimony. The pain you felt will become the platform for the glory he reveals. The questions you ask will turn into the answers you share with others. The very delay that tried to break you will become the victory that builds you. So don't despise the delay. Don't give up because the timeline doesn't match your expectation. Don't settle for less because the wait feels too long. If God promised it, he's faithful to finish it. And when he does, you'll see that the victory was there all along. It was just hidden until the right time. Victory is often hidden in delay because God doesn't just want to give you what you asked for. He wants to give you more than you imagined. He doesn't just want to answer your prayer. He wants to enlarge your faith. He doesn't just want to meet your expectation. He wants to exceed it. And the delay is the wrapping paper he uses to hide the gift until the moment you're ready to receive it. Faith is easy when the answer comes quickly, when the prayer is answered overnight, when the door swings wide, the moment you knock. But real faith isn't measured in the moments of instant breakthrough. Real faith shows up in the stretch, in the silence, in the space between what God promised and what you can see. Faith in the waiting is the bridge to victory. Because waiting by itself doesn't get you anywhere. You can wait in worry, you can wait in doubt, you can wait in bitterness. Waiting doesn't produce victory, but waiting in faith, that's what builds the bridge between where you are and where God is taking you. Faith is the lumber. Faith is the nails. Faith is the rope that holds you steady when the waters rise and the winds blow. Sometimes you don't realize how much faith you have until you're forced to hold it longer than you wanted to. You prayed and nothing happened. You believed and nothing moved. You obeyed and nothing shifted. And every day that passes whispers, it's not working. It's not worth it, just give up. But faith in the waiting answers back. God is still working. His word is still true. He's still making a way. Think about Noah. God told him to build an ark, and then the skies stayed clear for years. Every hammer strike, every plank nailed into place was an act of faith in waiting. The storm didn't show up the next day. The animals didn't line up the next week. Yet Noah kept building because faith is not about proof, it's about trust. That ark became the bridge between his waiting and his victory. Faith in the waiting doesn't mean you never feel tired. It doesn't mean you never question. It doesn't mean you never cry. It means you choose to keep moving forward even when the ground under your feet feels shaky. It means you show up to worship when your heart feels empty. It means you keep praying even when the heavens feel silent. It means you keep sowing seeds even when the soil looks dry. And here's the beauty. Faith doesn't just get you to the victory. Faith changes you in the process. By the time you cross that bridge, you're not the same person who started the journey. You're stronger, deeper, wiser. You carry scars that tell stories, lessons that anchor you, hope that nobody can take away. If God gave you the victory instantly, you wouldn't have the faith to keep it. It's the waiting that builds the bridge, and it's the bridge that makes you ready. Sometimes we want the destination, but not the journey. We want the promise without the process. But what if the process is the very thing that makes the promise possible? The waiting season may feel like wasted space, but in reality, it's sacred ground. Every day you hold on, every moment you refuse to let go, every tear you cry while still saying, I trust you, that's faith building your bridge. And I need you to know the bridge will hold. Even when you can't see what's ahead, even when the fog of uncertainty surrounds you, even when you don't know how much longer it will take, faith doesn't need a map. It just needs a word from God. If He said He'll bring you through, then faith is the bridge that will carry you there. Victory doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes victory looks like simply not giving up. Sometimes it looks like still believing after years of delay. Sometimes it looks like standing firm when everything in you wants to quit. And when you finally step into the promise, you'll see that it wasn't just the destination that mattered. It was the faith you built while crossing the bridge. So if you're in the waiting, don't stop believing. Don't tear down the bridge halfway through. Don't let discouragement cause you to retreat. Keep building plank by plank with prayer, nail by nail with trust, step by step with endurance. Because one day the waiting will end, the promise will come, and you'll walk across that bridge into victory. Faith in the waiting is not wasted energy. It is not empty hope. It is not blind optimism. Faith in the waiting is the bridge God designed to carry you from promise to fulfillment, from trial to triumph, from hope deferred to hope realized. And when you step on the other side, you'll look back and realize it was the faith you held in the waiting that carried you to your victory. Waiting feels like weakness. It feels like you're stuck on pause while everyone else is pressing play. It feels like you're behind, like you're missing out, like life is moving forward and you're standing still. But what if the waiting you hate is the very weapon God is putting in your hands? What if the waiting is not holding you back, but equipping you for the very battle you've been praying to win? Your waiting season is a weapon. See, we think weapons are obvious: a sword, a shield, a strategy. Something strong and visible, but God loves to take what looks weak and turn it into strength. David's sling didn't look like much until it knocked down a giant. A shepherd's staff didn't look like much until it split the Red Sea. A handful of loaves and fish didn't look like much until it fed thousands. And waiting doesn't look like much until you realize it's sharpening your faith, teaching your endurance, and building your strength. Your waiting season is where God forges you in fire. It's the training ground where He strips away everything that would weaken you in the battle ahead. You think you're losing time, but you're actually gaining strength. You think you're falling behind, but you're actually being refined. The tears you've cried, the prayers you've prayed, the nights you've stayed awake wrestling with doubt, those are not wasted moments. They are the weight room of your spirit. Every time you chose to trust again, you were adding another weapon to your arsenal. Because waiting doesn't just change what you're waiting for. Waiting changes you. It breaks your dependence on people. It humbles your heart. It teaches you to live on God's word when nothing else makes sense. And that kind of faith, the kind that's been tested, stretched, and tried, is dangerous to the enemy. That's why your waiting feels like warfare. That's why the pressure is heavy. Because the enemy knows when you come out of this, you won't just come out with a blessing, you'll come out with a weapon. Think about Joseph. He waited in a pit. He waited in a prison. He waited through betrayal, false accusation, and disappointment. But his waiting wasn't wasted. It became a weapon. When the famine hit, he had wisdom to save a nation. When his brothers bowed before him, he had forgiveness to reconcile a family. The years he thought were stolen became the very years that shaped him into the man who could carry the weight of his calling. And maybe that's what God is doing in you. Maybe He's not punishing you with delay. Maybe He's preparing you with strength. Maybe He's giving you scars that will become your story, patience that will become your platform, perseverance that will become your power. Every not yet is sharpening you. Every wait is strengthening you. Every silent season is secretly arming you with faith the enemy can't shake. So don't despise the waiting. Don't curse it. Don't throw it away. Lean into it. Let it make you stronger. Let it push your roots deeper. Let it strip away the shallow so it can build something unshakable in you. When you learn how to wield your waiting, you stop seeing it as punishment and start seeing it as preparation. Your waiting season is a weapon because when you come out on the other side, you won't just have a testimony, you'll have authority to speak to others who are waiting, authority to declare God's faithfulness when it looks like he's silent, authority to walk through storms without fear because you've been through the valley and survived. That kind of authority doesn't come cheap. It's forged in the fire of waiting. And here's the promise: when the waiting ends, when the shift comes, when the victory breaks through, you'll see that the very thing you resented was the thing God used to prepare you. The waiting season didn't make you weaker, it made you a warrior. The waiting didn't take your weapon away, it became your weapon. So hold your head high in the waiting, stand firm in the silence, keep walking through the delay, because every day you endure, every step you take in faith, every moment you trust when you can't trace him, you're sharpening your sword, you're loading your sling, you're arming your spirit, and when the battle comes, you'll be ready, not because you skipped the waiting, but because you survived it. Your waiting season is not your weakness. It is your weapon, and when God finally calls you forward, you won't just step into victory, you'll fight from victory with the very weapon you gained in the waiting.